Hey, I'm Jacob. Welcome to Choo. In this video, we're going to be busting more mushroom foraging myths. If you haven't already, I suggest checking out our previous myth busting video. There we talk about whether or not you should pluck or cut. We talk about whether or not you're supposed to tap a mushroom, a few other things. So check that out, then come back and check this out, because we're going to be touching on a few new things, touching on different misconceptions or questions that are often posted on a bunch of foraging forums. We're going to bust some myths, answer some questions, and perhaps start a discussion on some of the things that are a little bit sketchy. Oh no, that's it. So first I want to talk about the legality of mushroom foraging in South Australia. Remember, laws vary from state to state, country to country, obviously, so I'm speaking specifically from a South Australian perspective. Also, this is not to be taken as legal advice, I have to say that, for legal reasons. I'm not a lawyer. All I'm doing is sharing my findings with you guys, and South Australian law regarding some of these things is really confusing. Half the time it's written poorly. It's dubious, to say the least, so take this with a grain of salt. But here's what I found when it comes to, say, the commercialization of foraging. First of all, it is 100% legal to forage for mushrooms on private properties, provided you have permission from the owner of said property, and provided that the mushrooms you're foraging for are not a controlled substance, which I will talk about controlled substances in a little bit. So if you want 100% of the law on your side, forage on private properties as long as the owner is cool. You should be fine. I often recommend or would suggest getting written permission from the owner just to cover your ass. It's my understanding that Forestry SA, who run and process all the wood in Kaipo Forest, which is a bio-renewable resource plantation we have going on here, which covers about 8,000 acres. It's one of the best foraging spots in South Australia. Forestry SA is totally cool if you want to pick mushrooms there, provided they are non-native or non-protected, and provided that you are not selling the mushrooms. So to make things perfectly clear, if you are foraging mushrooms with intent to sell them, they must come from private property. You cannot do this on Forestry SA land, nor any other public land, as far as I'm concerned, without permits. It's my understanding that you can commercialize foraging for educational purposes, potentially other commercial purposes, as long as you obtain the correct permits, which are not that easy to get. See, I contacted the Department of Environment and Water regarding commercial permits, and they told me to contact Forestry SA, which I did, and here we are 3 weeks later with still no reply. Not even a reply. So I don't know where to go to get these permits. Maybe just keep hounding them. I haven't had any success, which doesn't really affect me because I don't want to commercialize my foraging. I just wanted more information so I can make this video. I know you do need permits. I'm not sure to what extent. If you know, leave a comment in the description below and back it up with some documentation. It's easy enough just to say something. I can say whatever I want. Unless you back it up, it's not good enough. One major issue I found when looking through different regulations, amendments, laws, permits, and so on is that mushrooms are not in the animal kingdom, they are not in the plant kingdom, they are in their own kingdom as fungi, as most of us know, yet so many regulatory bodies and documentations place them under plants, they might place them under something else, they might be in their own category. It's different through all different states. Their own classifications on legally binding documents are inaccurate most of the time, so finding accurate information is very, very difficult. A lot of these policies, these laws, these regulations are, for lack of a better word, antiquated. I think they need some serious attention. Even in this book, which is a very common foraging book, written and edited by the CSIRO, or at least people working for them, it's produced at the very least by the CSIRO. This still has a few pages dedicated to the legality of mushroom foraging, and even in there they say, we don't really know because different states, blah blah blah, different bodies, like do you contact Forestry SA? Well yes, if you're foraging in one of their forests. What about if I want to forage on Crown land? There's just so much miscategorization. They're even scientifically wrong half the time. It makes it very, very difficult to go about it legally. So I'm just as lost as everyone else. What do you do? I would say if you don't have a permit, don't commercialize your foraging. Unless it's on private land. Okay, if you're on private land, go fucking nuts. Again, as long as it's not a controlled substance or a protected species, like there are some native species that you just can't pick because they're endangered or whatever. Most of the mushrooms you're going to be foraging for are European, they're invasive. If you're on private land with written permission, you can go absolutely crazy, sell them off, do whatever you want, and I personally see no problem with commercializing foraged mushrooms, especially really common ones like pine mushrooms. You see it all the time. People selling them, then people posting them to forums and getting shitty about it. Like, oh my god, you're just trying to commercialize nature's gift. It's like, mate, I'm walking through a sea. I'm wading through a sea of rotting pine mushrooms because no one's picking them. Like, people are picking them, but they're not picking. There's no way you can make a dent. Until those mushrooms become significantly impacted, I say fucking sell them if you want. Just go nuts, because you're not hurting mushrooms by doing that. Check out our Mushroom Foraging Myths video, part 1, because honestly there's a lot of information there about the correct way to forage for mushrooms. A lot of people have absolutely no idea. The next thing I want to talk about is it legal to pick the Amanita muscaria, one of the most iconic and beautiful mushrooms that are super abundant here in the Adelaide Hills? Is it legal? The short answer is, well, yes, it's legal, and no, it's not legal. Here's what I mean. So according to the Controlled Substances Act in South Australia, controlled substance means it's illegal to possess this substance, drugs and shit. Any mushroom containing psilocybin is illegal to cultivate, pick, pluck, possess, so on and so forth. But Amanita muscaria, despite having active components in it, does not contain psilocybin, and Amanita muscaria is not on the controlled substance list. It does have a psychoactive component in it, which, when extracted or processed, is on the controlled substance list, but the mushroom itself is not. Again, it's kind of a grey area. Definitely you cannot possess this substance, muscimel, but it doesn't say you can't pick the mushroom. Like, if you look at psilocybin, it's illegal to possess psilocybin in any sort of form, including in mushroom form, but not for muscimel. I really think this government needs to get its shit together, because how are we as citizens meant to obey the law if the laws are so obscure, or we can't even access a list of laws, or they're scientifically inaccurate, or they contradict each other? It's a bit fucking ridiculous. And if the government or their affiliating bodies can't even point you in the right directions when you try to do the right thing, so like if you email them, they say, we don't know, or they don't email you back at all, how are we meant to adhere to these laws, and is it fair then if we get caught out? Common sense should be commonplace, but it's often not that simple. Most arrests around controlled substances, at least on a minor quantity, not like in the big distribution quantities, are often up to the discretion of the arresting officer or the prosecuting officer. Now again, I'm not a lawyer, so everything here is just a bit of information. I'll link to a whole bunch of stuff in the description below, but really that seems a bit funny, isn't it? That it's up to the whim of just some dude, some cop. It's just like, oh, I might decide to fine you today, or I might decide to arrest you today if you had an Amanita, even though Amanitas are not on the controlled substance list. I would argue most of the times it'd be pretty fair. Let's say you had 1 or 2 Amanita muscarias in a basket with a bunch of other mushrooms. A cop pulls you over and goes, what's going on here? A good lawyer or a kind officer or a decent magistrate could argue that you were foraging simply for recreational ornamental use, not meant for consumption. If you had 2 shopping bags just full of Amanita muscaria, I don't think the courts would look too fondly upon you. Again, this is not legal advice, this is just my opinion. It's not illegal, apparently, to pick a mushroom. It is illegal to possess muscimel. These mushrooms have muscimel in them. My advice would be, don't pick them. Again, it's fucking wonky, and I don't agree with all the laws, but we here at Choo do adhere to them, because what other choice do we have? You can be an activist, you can protest, you can be the voice of change, you can push for amendments without breaking the law, and that's what we have to do. Sadly, this is the world we live in. But you can change the rules without breaking them. Over time, these things happen. We've seen this time and time again. For now, I would suggest take a lot of photos, look at the mushrooms, give them a little kiss, but leave them where they are. If you're not going to pick them though, is there perhaps a loophole? Tell me your secrets. I mean, I don't want to put any shame out there on this mushroom. This has been used in ceremony and tradition and just all kinds of different cultures and ceremony for thousands and thousands of years. The legality regarding it in Australia is dubious at best. There's nothing that I found that says you can't pick this mushroom, you just can't process it. That being said, I could be wrong, so you just have to ask yourself, is it worth the risk? I mean, I'm not going to tell you what to do. I'm just going to say, for legal reasons, we here at Choo do not condone the picking and consuming of this mushroom. Of course, I'm joking. Don't do this. Amanita muscaria has toxins in there that need to be processed out before made for consumption. I like the idea though, if you don't pick, let's say you're looking for magic mushrooms, if you don't pick the mushroom, can you just eat them straight out of the ground? What law have you broken? You didn't pick them, you didn't process them. I'm sure you could get in trouble for disorderly behavior or something. Like, just being a brat. I will say this for legality reasons, we here at Choo do not condone the consumption of magic mushrooms, but it is a fun thought. Okay, next myth. So I hear this all the time, or read this all the time on forums such as Facebook, and it kind of pisses me off because it's spreading misinformation, which sometimes it's just inaccurate, other times it can be quite dangerous. And that is, if bugs are eating a mushroom, that means that mushroom is okay for human consumption. Wrong, guys. Absolutely fucking wrong. It's wrong for one major reason. Humans are not bugs. I know a few dropkick maggots, but I tell you what, they're not bugs. Different toxins, different chemicals affect different animals differently. Okay? Just because a bug's eating it doesn't mean it's safe for you to eat. That is absolutely a ludicrous thing. You do see it quite often. It's kind of scary how often that pops up on some of these forums. Here are two examples off the top of my head. Amanita muscaria. Grab an Amanita when you're out, peel back the, even though I said don't pick them before, peel back the gills, you'll see all kinds of mites, caterpillars, all kinds of bugs. Here's a little grub here, I've got some worms. I put them under the microscope that I've got here, and you can clearly see a whole bunch of different bugs eating this mushroom that does contain not just psychoactive toxins, but other toxins as well that can poison a human body. So here we have the yellow staining mushroom, Agarius xanthophyllus. It's a toxic mushroom, not necessarily a deadly mushroom, and as we see, bugs are eating it. Have a look at some of this footage. You can clearly see that this is riddled with bugs. So just because bugs are eating a mushroom doesn't mean that it's safe to eat. That's not how it works. But this mushroom is perfectly fine, again, to pick it up, touch it, smell it. You can even pop a little bit of that in your mouth. You spit that out and you will not get sick. So the last myth in this video that I want to bust, or the last thing I want to talk about in this video, is staining. I saw this on a forum the other day. It was Facebook again. I'm old, I'm always on Facebook. And it wasn't the first time I've seen it, and I guarantee it won't be the last time, that if a mushroom stains blue, that means it's toxic or a psychedelic mushroom. Wrong. This is not the case at all. It can be the case, but it's not necessarily the case. Two things. One, not all psychedelic mushrooms stain blue, and two, lots of edible mushrooms that aren't psychedelic stain blue or a myriad array of other colours. Take this classic pine mushroom, the most abundant food source here in South Australia that is a mushroom in my opinion, stains blue, or like a greeny blue, or a bunch of different colours depending if it's waterlogged, if it's bruised. This is not a psychedelic mushroom, this is a super common mushroom. The very people who talk about this probably pick this mushroom all the fucking time. Dude, pine mushrooms stain blue or bluey green. They're not toxic, they're still good to eat, they're just bruised. Lots of mushrooms, edible mushrooms, psychedelic mushrooms, toxic mushrooms, deadly mushrooms will stain or bruise all different types of colours, or sometimes not at all. Some mushrooms don't change colour at all when they're damaged. People, especially amateurs, I find, are looking for that quick solution, that quick answer, that quick identifier that says this mushroom is good to go. It's kind of like a shortcut, but it doesn't work. It leads you nowhere. It's a dead end because there is no shortcut to foraging. You have to put in the research and do the time. I suggest checking out my top 5 foraging tips. Here we discuss 5 things for amateurs and experts alike to really focus on when foraging. And the most important thing is doing your research and putting in the time. Bruising, staining, color changing in a mushroom can be a great identifier, but you can't just have one. You need to check out the stem, the stipe, the different coloration on there, the gills, the color of the mushroom, the season, the location, the smell, the taste even, the bruising, the spore print, which is like the fingerprint of a mushroom. You need to tick all these boxes before you can correctly identify a mushroom. There is not one single mushroom that I can think of that has a single identification point. Like when you touch this mushroom, it screams in your face, or it says, pick me, I'm edible. This doesn't happen. You need to be able to tick all these boxes to safely identify a mushroom before you consume it. And even then, I recommend going with someone who's an expert, cross-referencing on all the forums, do as much as you can, because at the end of the day, there's not too many deadly mushrooms. There are deadly mushrooms out there. We have death caps in South Australia, the deadliest mushroom on earth, full of bugs. So there are bugs that I've picked these up just the other day, and I saw one in there full of mites. So bugs are eating the deadliest mushroom on earth, but then there's people online saying that that mushroom is okay to eat. You cannot tick one box and go, that is okay to eat. It's just not safe. It can lead to, well, some bad trips for a start. It can lead to poisoning, and it can even lead to death. So very rarely, but it can. Spreading misinformation is not the way to go. There is no quick solution to foraging. You must put in the time. You just watch the video.
Well, that about sums it up. I've been Jacob and you've been watching Choo. Hopefully this video cleared some things up. Check out all of our other foraging videos. We have a pretty extensive playlist. Remember, the number one rule is if you are not 100% certain what it is that you're picking, don't eat it. It's not worth it. That being said, you can learn. Don't be afraid of the mighty mushroom, but educate yourself. These videos that we're putting together here is just us sharing our journey as we learn and grow. Until next time, friends. Farewell.
Alright. Vomit tube.
Vomit tube. Vomit tube.
Not enough pressure.
Want to drink this? No, I don't drink that.
I don't know. Shitty. Not a waste because we're creating art.
Yeah, that'll do it.
It's okay. I'll have to go a little bit higher though. Yeah, look at this fucking gnarly shit, dude. It's fucking gross, dude. Get it in there. Oh, it stinks. Oh.
Poo jamming. I mean,
Yeah, that's a very familiar sound.
I think we're at capacity. Are we? It's going in there.
He'll get in there. This one doesn't smell as bad, but it smells like dog food. That's kind of like.
It does have the exact same smell as dog food. I wonder what that is.
I'll say go, count to 2 and then blast. You ready? Alright, go.
I feel like that went a lot better. Oh shit, it is. I don't know.
Yeah. Oh. Oh.
I feel like that went a lot better. I wanna see that, dude.